What I'm working on today is a 2014 Chevy Silverado that somebody tried to jump a friend's vehicle off, and something obviously went wrong, as you can see by the mess I got right here. What I did was I used a set of jumper cables to make me a battery connection between this adapted fuse and this stud over here. And if we check, we got battery power there, battery power there, battery power there, of course, right? We come over here and we've got battery power there, battery power there. We've got it there even though nothing else is attached to it. And we have no battery power there. We do have battery power here, here, and here. So what I figured they did, they probably jumped off from this stud and it blew it out. And to be sure I didn't have something else going on the truck and blow out another one of these fuse panels, I had an old fuse that I had salvaged out of something else, and I just adapted it, put it on this stud, and then tied between here. Well, I take it back. I tied between here and this stud. This is I believe it's a 300 amp circuit. Take that back. That's a 175 amp circuit. So I actually used a 300 amp fuse, so that's a little bit of overkill. But you could use a mega fuse, 175 amp, back in place right here, and use it for testing. You would have to get highly creative and take all this out and drill a hole through here and bring it in over this way to be able to replace that with a aftermarket fuse holder. Not saying it couldn't be done, but it'd be a little bit difficult. I'm going to put a whole new box in there with a new fuse. But while I'm standing here, let me see how a 175 amp mega fuse lines up to that. We have the handy dandy 175 amp fuse, and we would have to put it like that. Yeah, you could conceivably drill a hole. Got that thing locked down on there now. You could conceivably drill a hole, cut away some plastic, put a bolt in with a nut and spacer on it to where it would sit level, and then put a fuse back in that manner. It could be done, but it just won't be as good as the factory setup. And you could even, because you got the height, you could even offset a little bit to make sure you got in a good piece of metal. I should try that. I'm not going to though. I should try that. What I might do is I might try that after I've got the new one on there and try working with this old one and see if I can make something come together for it. It'd be interesting. I believe it could be done, but it would certainly be cheaper than buying a whole new fuse assembly or fuse block assembly. But like I said, I used, for test purposes, I clamped one clamp from my jumper cables there, and the other one here, you're going to get a pretty good arc. And that's because it's powering up everything in the vehicle. Something else I got to do here, the customer had noticed this, and I would have noticed it when I took it apart, but this blew up fitter connector back here, if I can get it out. That's been burned as well. GM tells us that is no longer available. We had a part number for it. I found it in service information. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to take and slip that terminal out of there and see if I have a terminal, and if I have a new terminal, I'll put it back in the same connector and just tell the customer that it was discolored, but it's got a new terminal and everything will be okay. If I don't, I'm going to have to fabricate something, probably because we have this one stud over here that doesn't have anything on it. I'll probably have to come off of it with a 60 amp fuse and tie it all in but I'll do more video on this next week as I'm taking care of this. Right now I just wanted to get this thing fixed to where you could just crank it up at will instead of having to jump everything off like this. This thing shouldn't be too terribly difficult to change. In case you missed it, that was a 10mm nut on the battery terminal. Let's see, this is going to come off with that, so we don't need to take that one off. We need to take this one off. And that one. And this one. And just for the sake of it. Just for the sake of argument, we're going to go one, two, oops, why'd I do that? Put some marks on it so we know which way it goes back together. See if I can get this thing rocked out of here. Yeah, we got two clips right there, and one on this side. Take that one out, take that one out. Set that over there. I want to leave this one off of here for the time being until I can get this on there, and then we're going to go with our marks the way we had them over there. We'll go with that one there. I don't think they'll hardly get separated anyways, but all that looks clean. Now for a little bit more finesse, I'll switch to a ratchet. There's that. Stick that back down there. Now I know this will crank up with this disconnected, because I did that before. I don't want to connect it right now because I want to look at that thing in detail and see what I can do to put a new terminal in there. Because if I put it in there now, I'm going to wind up arcing that thing, and I don't want to do that. Because once you start having arc marks, you can't get rid of them. Let's see, how will that thing come out of there? I don't know. Kind of looks like, oops. Kind of looks like this might pop out to the side. Somehow. Yeah. Well, it does in a sort of way. This won't go down in there. Got a handy dandy pack of terminal removing tools. Let's see if some like in here will work. Well, we're going to try this again. Let me see if this tool will get in here and possibly release some clips there. It don't feel like it. Well. See if a single blade will fit in there on either side. It does not appear to, it's too wide. Feels like you need two of those. I don't know if it'll work or not, but I've had this tool for years and never found anything for it to work on, but it might just work on this. And it might just not too. Well, somehow I was actually able to use that, flipping this out, and a pair of pliers to pull out on it, and I was able to get that terminal out. How about that? Now, I'll have to see if I got a terminal like that, and I don't think I do. It's going to be rotated the other way. So I'll probably have to cut that off and put in an inline fuse holder. Well, that's going to be that for today. I'll finish this up on Monday. Okay, back working on this 2014 Silverado. And I'm going to splice this inline fuse holder back in place of this connection here. In order to do that, I'm going to wind up crimping and soldering this connection. And because I'm going to solder it with an open torch, I want to move this battery out the way. And if you remember this, you lift up on this edge. I already took the cable loose in there. And then we can flip this back out the way. This cable's already off. The clamp is missing, so I can just slip this battery hopefully up and out of the way. How much you want to bet it's going to be a pain? This tank's probably going to have to be moved. Let me see if I can get a different angle on it. And hopefully I don't have my big head in the way. There we go. And like I said, I'm going to take and open this up a little bit and get to that wire real well. Let's see what I can do here as far as eyeballing this thing. Now I'm blind. Blind to say. I gotta get some of this tape stripped back so I can get to some good clean wire to crimp onto. And see, what we're going to do is this side here was burnt. This side here was fine, so we're going to leave it alone. And we're going to cut this off and splice this terminal on and run it back around here to the battery. I'm going to cut that off right there. And let's see about stripping this back. And I believe that's probably going to be a 10 gauge wire, and this is an 8 gauge terminal, so we're going to take and strip it back a little bit further and double it up. I was trying to be all fancy and bend this thing over and fill it up, but it ain't working out so good for me, so I'm just going to work at getting a good crimp on it and then soldering it. And here I am messing around. I done lost my piece of heat shrink tubing. Where did it go? I got to have it. Now that I finally got a good crimp on there, I will lay a little bit of solder in it too. See how this goes. Kind of get it heated up in the center and then flow it in from the ends. And what that does is it keeps the heat concentrated in the center of the terminal, so when you touch it to the outside edge, it flows to the center instead of flowing down the line. And if you just heat it up on the end and keep heating and flowing and flowing and flowing, it'll get the solder will wick all the way up this wire and all the way down this wire and make it brittle. And once it's brittle, it'll fracture. What we're going to do now is take and move that out just a little bit. Slide that heat shrink tubing on there. And bring our flame back. And heat the heat shrink tubing. And the last thing I got to do is, this terminal wasn't being used in this box, so I'm going to pull that terminal out, and that bolt out. That's the plan, at least. You got to see what's got to be done to do that. That's got that out. Now we're going to put this in this fuse box. And if you were to see this thing up close, and we'll talk about it later, this is a 125 amp load off of here. This was originally 60 amps, so we're just going to use that 125, and we'll let it feed our 60 amp fuse that we got in there. See if I can get this up in there now. Hopefully it's easier said than done, or easier done than said. Let's see. Nothing like the right tool, right? He thinks this will be the right size nut, and it is. So we'll just use the nut to pull this up in place. And it's pulled up in there now. So now we got all that done and that ready to go. It's all out the way. And we're going to see about sliding that battery back in there. We got to try and slide this battery back down in this hole. And hopefully it slides in easier than it came out. Now, move this back around here. Get it set on there. Get that battery terminal in place. This will feed right into there. It should latch too. There, it latches in place. We've got a 60 amp fuse there. And what we're going to do is we're going to bring this under. And bring that under and around. I think that's the way we're going to go. Does that look reasonable? No. I'm going to try one more thing. This one, make it look like it belongs there. What we're going to do is bring it down like that. And then we'll slope it around. See if it'll flip over. Make it nice and pretty. Prettiful. Yeah. No, I won't do that, so. We'll go with that right there. And what that'll do is gives us 125 amps of that stud from this stud to here, and then from this fuse on it's 60 amp, just like this factory fuse was around here. And I still don't like the way that goes. I'm gonna have to figure something different. I need to have that bracket back on there so I know which way it turns. I think it's kind of right, but not quite. Spread that out a little bit. Okay. So I'm going to probably reroute that a different way. I guess I got to get all these brackets back in here and see how I want it. But that should let us put all that back together and have it looking real good. Got to get this cable out. Bring it up under here. And that'll be that. But I think what I want to do is go ahead and hook the meter up on it before I go to lunch and check to see if there's drain on the system. And we're going to go right there. And we got about 1/4 of an amp drain at the moment.
What's up, Steve?
Hey Jeff, how's it going?
We're getting old. Just to let you know. You know what I'm saying?
I went to the doctor this morning and he let me know.
Did you really?